If you can somehow watch this, do. It's so brilliant. Otherwise, there is a very good commentary on it. 2 parts.
Because I'm autistic.
Yes. Thank you, Chris Packham, for using the word autistic straight away and not saying that on the spectrum or have autism. So it's really great to normalise that term right from the beginning.
I've been astonished by the thousands of letters and emails I've received from other autistic people.
Yeah, the letters he talks about receiving really makes me think about my own autism diagnosis and my ongoing thoughts with them and how I've sort of found it easier to open up now that I know exactly what's going on. And I can also completely empathise with how distressing it must be if you have got all this going on in your head and you don't have anyone to open up to. It can make you feel like the whole world is following some other sort of rule book and they're not letting you in on it.
Every autistic person has their own unique set of strengths and challenges, not always apparent to the naked eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Every autistic person is different, just like every neurotypical person is different.
When the environment suits your autistic needs and you feel safe or comfortable and not stressed all the time, you can focus on the things that you actually care about. What I can highly recommend also is this documentary where Chris Packham talks about his autism and how he got through life. Just like everybody else who is autistic, he struggled trying to act normal. And then you reach a point where you just can't do it anymore. And then you want to share about your experience, how it is for you to be autistic in this non-autistic world. It's truly a very insightful documentary, so I can highly recommend it. I will just share some screenshots because otherwise my video gets blocked. But the things I can highly relate to, I really want to share as my own experience as well. Living in a house that is surrounded by forest and nature, this is really my dream. That's the environment I would need in order to thrive and be creative, not feeling stressed. Just like Chris Packham, I really love going into the woods because nature is so recharging and calming, and I love the beauty of it. The nature sounds, being surrounded by trees. It is so relaxing. Living in the middle of the woods, it gives you peace of mind and also prevents you from being judged when you are a little bit different than most people. You will never be able to change who you are. You are autistic, and that is that. No matter how much you try to mask it, pretend to be normal, underneath you are always autistic. And it has an impact on your life, yes. And each of us is different. No autistic is the same as the other. I can relate to a lot what Chris Packham shares about his autism. However, we are not the same. We had a different upbringing, grew up in a very different environment. Being male or female makes a big difference on the expression of your autism. So these are all variables. But if you cope too well, if you mask too well, you end up being diagnosed very late. Controlling your environment is one of the ways that you can really decrease stress, because you prevent overwhelm from happening, and therefore you have less anxiety. Having a space where you can be yourself, not having to pretend to be anything else but you. So he mentions that he has the blinds down. I also do that. I have the window shutters always closed to prevent too much light from coming in, and this is my balcony door, so the light comes in, but it blurs out all the stuff that I don't want to be confronted and overloaded with, and it makes such a tremendous difference. What it can't block out is the noise, which is why I would prefer to really live near the woods or in the woods. That way you can easily prevent sensory overload, at least in your environment where you feel safe and can be yourself. Because if you live in a city and not in the woods, as soon as you leave your house, go to school or to work, it's noisy. There is just so much noise. And it's exhausting. And this is a very important statement. Makes me feel unsure about life, feeling distant and empty. And that's just on the way to school or work. You are not even there yet. And you are getting bombarded by so much. And there is no way to avoid that. Unless you work from home. You will always be confronted with all these noises, smells, and so much visual information and people. It's intrusive indeed. It's just too much. And that's enough to make me lose it. You can cope to some extent, but it's so draining. It can be indeed physically painful to deal with all of this, to the point of being traumatic. If there is too much going on in your eyes and ears. And it's hard to deal with it. And that's what happens. Mind goes blank. One feels powerless. And this is shutdown, freeze. Several autistic people have already done a reaction video to the documentary Inside Our Autistic Minds by Packham. And this is one.
I'm an autistic person. I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD at the age of 19, and I will be reacting to Chris Packham's documentary Inside Our Autistic Minds.
And I sure hope that this documentary by Chris Packham becomes available for everybody, not just the UK. It really has blown my mind. Inside Our Autistic Minds, Chris Packham helps give autistic people a voice in a new documentary. In a BBC documentary titled Inside Our Autistic Minds, Chris Packham meets autistic people from across the UK and helps them create short films to reveal to their family and friends what's really going on inside their minds. Since sharing his own autism diagnosis with the world, naturalist and presenter Chris Packham has been flooded with letters and emails from other autistic people, frustrated that their friends, families, and co-workers don't understand them. So in this series, Chris wants to bridge the gap by teaming up with top filmmakers, graphic designers, animators, and musicians. Chris helps a group of autistic people create short films to reveal to their family and friends how they're truly feeling inside, what's really going on in their autistic mind. So this is the portrait of Murray, who is a non-speaking autistic, yet his message is so profound. If you're willing to listen, I will try to say how I feel. If I have too many people in a room at one time, at one place, it is too overwhelming for me to have to process. I have to jiggle my brain to make it settle. It's just how I cope. Water takes my pain away because it allows me to lose myself in a place that asks no questions of my abilities. Every drop lets me be me. Before I could communicate through typing, I remember that I was frustrated by people who were kind, but didn't know my brain was as good as people who can speak. Now I have the chance to speak up for people like me. I'm speaking from my heart. Non-verbal people are pleasing to be around. Oh, this gets me so emotional. Because we sense the world in a deeper way than those who talk. Because we cannot express our emotions instantly. We become deep thinkers, people watchers. We have the same dreams as everyone else. So please don't treat us differently. Each of us is a star. eager to be discovered and named in the atmosphere. If you acknowledge our abilities, we can shine brighter. We have so much to say. So please, hear us. So every time I watch this, I get so emotional. I have a voice to speak, but still it doesn't come so fluently as I would want to. I'm better at writing or expressing myself in the videos I make, and especially during school I have struggled with situational mutism, not being able to answer a question because I was put on the spot and I got so anxious and stressed out. I just couldn't say a word, nothing. I'm very aware that's not the same as being completely nonverbal, but I can to some extent relate when you can't express yourself in words fluently. Therefore, the videos I make, I just borrow words from other people when something I watch totally resonates with my own experience, and they say it so eloquently that it mirrors what I experience. Borrowing words is just easier to try to communicate my own experience, especially when it's made in such a manner, visual, that gets the message across. So here Flo mentions how stressed she is about the whole situation, yet her partner being completely in the dark about it. And when you feel overwhelmed, then it's just everything at once. And then the problem is that you want to express your distress, but because you are so stressed out, words fail you. So it is known that Broca's area, the speech center of the brain, is impacted by stress. And then especially in a situation when you would need to express yourself in words, you can't. That's an excellent visual she gives. It was like trying to pass rocks through a filter. Doesn't work. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get it out of my mouth. And Chris Packham notes that this is a stage called Shutdown, freeze response. You become situationally mute, and only until you have recovered, recharged in solitude, been silent for a while, processed everything, then you can talk about it. But this is so much later, when the situation has passed. So maybe you were not able to defend yourself at that moment. And then you may also get exploited, or override happens to you by people who just take over because you don't talk. When autistic people experience high levels of sudden anxiety, It can leave us feeling totally overwhelmed, unable to process thoughts and unable to speak. And then, I can't say things to you, otherwise I would be. And often other people just don't realize that. And Flo says, can't you see that I can't communicate with you right now? So it's very important for people to not get impatient or angry or anything. Because really the words don't come out in this situation, and being screamed at or criticized or pushed to doing stuff, it's really not helpful. It will only increase the stress.
I knew from a very young age that I was different. Birthday parties made me anxious. And by the time I was 4 years old, I became so sure that if I didn't hide my differences, people wouldn't like me. So I became a version of myself I thought those around me would accept. I became a mimic, copying other people, imitating normal behaviour and suppressing anything weird. For most people, these rules come naturally, automatically. Their faces match their voices, match their feelings. But I had to think about every little thing. In the end, I put so much effort into this mask of normality that nobody could even tell that I had one. When you're autistic, masking, camouflaging is a survival strategy. It's to avoid judgment or avoid bullying. It's a way to fit into the non-autistic world. Now, I'm tired. It's exhausting pretending to be normal all the time. I'm beginning to think it might be time to embrace my authentic self. I'm worried that if you see me rocking back and forth or flapping my hands, then you'll think that I'm not okay. And I'm worried that if you see me silent, unable to speak, you'll think that I need fixing.
I have a slogan, the autistic spectrum from a person, not just a textbook. I think it's really important to hear about the experiences of a person on the autism spectrum, but to know that everybody is different, and to also be able to link that with what you already know about autism.
The only ground rule we have is respect. So as long as we all respect each other and how we manage these situations, that's fine.
In all honesty, when you see something in any kind of news about autism, it's usually not great. I went into this knowing how other people felt about it and knowing that everyone had given it such amazing reviews. So I went into it with high hopes, and it still exceeded my expectations. The fact that there was an option that meant that I didn't have to struggle as much, but unfortunately there's just not enough of those options worldwide to be able to cover, or at least nationwide, to be able to help more people, and more people that are assigned female at birth hurts a lot, because I think, having lived experience with being autistic, there are so many struggles, but the one part that got me the most about being autistic is the education system, and going through systems within education that are supposed to be there to help autistic people, but they are useless and hopeless. And how people in schools, just because they work with autistic kids and autistic children and autistic people, even autistic adults, they automatically think that they've got such a wide understanding of autism, when in fact they are completely bloody clueless at everything. It just sucks so bad, and that is something that really needs changing.
I realise now that there's no way I could do my job without Asperger's. What I do
in terms of just making this programme is afforded to me because of my Asperger's, because of my neurological differences here. So that's being able to see things with perhaps a greater clarity, to see the world in a different way, in my case, in a very visual way. But, I've been able to understand that, and that's something which was a painful process to go through, but I did it, and now I'm very fortunate to be able to reap the benefits of that. Not all autistic people are in that position. There are many aspects of Asperger's which are enormously positive, and there must be many other people out there who could contribute in an immensely productive way, who aren't able to do so because they can't quite manage some aspects of their life in the way that I do in order to make it productive. In the UK, only 14% of autistic adults are in full-time employment, and that's the lowest amount for any notifiable disability. And that is a tragic loss.